Okay, good morning, boys and girls. We're going to start our next lesson. This time it's lesson 4 in chapter 13. We're going to be comparing decimals. So we've already learned how to convert a fraction to a decimal, making sure that we have if we're comparing numbers that are smaller than 1, we have a 0, then our decimal point, then either one place for our tens and a second place for our hundredths. We learned how to do numbers that are greater than 1. Like say we wanted to do, let's say this one, let's do an example here of 2 tenths. We know that we have no holes, and then we put our decimal point and we have 2 in the tenths place. Or we could have 17 100ths, and that would be 0 and 1/7. Or we could even do, say, 3 100ths, and that would be still be 0 point, but then we have to, because we have to have 2 spots, because our zero, there are 2 zeros here, we have to have 2 places after the decimal, so we have to put in our placeholder 0 and then a 3. So we learned that already. But we also learned that we could do mixed numbers. We could take something like 3 6 tenths, and we can convert that into a decimal. We always have to put our equal sign, and instead of putting a 0 here, we have 3 holes. So we would put a 3 there instead of a 0. Decimal point says and, 3 6 tenths. So we go to our 10th spot and we put in our 6. By the same token, we could do 3 17 hundredths, where this time, instead of having 0, we have 3 holes, and 17 hundredths. We have to make sure that we have 2 spots all the time. Or we could do 4, let's say, and 3 100ths. It would equal 4, and we can't just write a 3 because it has to have 2 spots because there's 2 zeros, so we have to put in a place holding 0 and then the 3. So we learned how to do all of that. That was the first lesson and the second lesson in our book. Then we learned how to expand a number. Say we had 62 and 20, no, I want to pick a different digit than 20. Let's pick 58 hundredths. 62 and 58 hundredths. So we learned how to do it in expanded form. We would write 60. We could do it in a couple of ways. We could do it in 2 steps, where we'd say there are 6 tens plus 2 ones plus 5 0.5 tenths plus 0.08 hundredths. I'm going to rewrite this because I ran out of room. I'm going to write this underneath it so I can start closer to the left. We could say that this was 6 tens plus 2 ones plus 5 tenths plus 8 hundredths. And then the next step, this is the 2-step process. So the next step, what does 6 tens equal? It equals 60 plus 2 ones equals 2 plus 5 tenths plus 8 hundredths. Okay? If you want to skip this green step, you can. But if you need to write it this way to help you, you may do that also. You may use your place value columns. We also learned that we could go in the opposite direction. Say we were given 700 plus 40 plus 9 plus 6/10 plus 2/100. And we could convert that into, from expanded form to standard form. So we would just write the first of each of these. 7 in the hundredths, 49, 749, and 6 and 2. So this is the expanded form here, and this is standard form. We also learned that we could write this in words. Let's take this number in words. We could write 740 hyphen 9 hyphen, because it's a two-word name for one number, and is the decimal point. Then you just write this. You write the digits first. What number is this? It's 62. SIXTY hyphen 2. 62 what? You take the last place value. Hundredths. Okay? And you could do it vice versa. If you were given the words, you could change it back to the numbers. Okay? All right. Now we're going to, that's a review. Now we're going to start the new lesson. So let's say you were given a set of numbers, and the way the book does it in the beginning, they give you numbers where the digits are all different, but then they try to really trick you, and they use the same digits, the same numbers, 123.45, and then 54321, and they just mix up the order of all the digits, okay? So you have to be careful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the rules that I want you to write down in your notebook. I'm going to put them right here on the camera, and what I want you to do is I want you to pause the video so that you can copy these 3 rules into your notebook. So you're going to put today's date, you're going to write that it's chapter 13-1, and these are the rules. To compare decimals, first bullet in purple, align, which means line up the digits by their place value. And the way that you can make sure everything's in the right place is by lining up the decimal points and then putting the numbers on either side. Being very careful to keep your numbers in the proper columns. Step 2 is the orange step. Start at the left and you compare the digits in the 2 numbers. You start in the greatest place. The furthest place to the left is the greatest place. And then step 3 is you keep comparing numbers until you get ones that are different. And then you can say which one is bigger than the other based on the digits that are different. So pause the video here and copy this down. Alrighty. So you've got your notes all copied down. Now, let's suppose you were given 2 5/10, 2 5/10, and you need to compare it to 2 58/100. Okay? You need to compare these using greater than, less than, or equal to symbols. All right. So look at here. I think, and what I always do, is I rewrite my numbers going down. So I'm going to write my first one, 2 5/10. Then I'm going to copy down my second one. Oh, but look at this, only has 2 digits with a decimal point, and this has 3 digits with a decimal point. So put your decimal point in first. I'm going to do this in a different color even so that it really shows up. I put my decimal point in. What comes before my decimal point in this second number? A 2. So I have 2 and a decimal point, 2 and a decimal point. Then what comes right after the decimal point? I have a 5. And then is there anything after the 5? Yes, there's an 8. So there's nothing above the 8 over here. The 2's are lined up, the decimal points line up, the 5's are lined up, the 8. So that's what they mean by step 1 when we say align the digits according to their place. The 1's place is all together in a column. The 10th's place is all in a column. And the 100th's place is all in the column. Even if you don't have any hundredths here. Okay? All your decimal points. So everything's in nice straight columns. Write each one on a line. Don't try to squeeze them in. Use lots of space. All right, step 2 says start at the left, which is the greatest place, and start comparing the numbers. 2 and 2. Step 3 says I have to keep going until I get digits that are different. Well, a 2 and a 2 are the same, so I still can't tell which number is bigger. Because right now they look equal. So I go to one position to the right. I have a 2 and a 5 and a 2 and a 5. I still don't know what's right. I don't know which one's bigger. Okay? So now I have to go to my third digit. I have an 8 and I have nothing up here. There's just a blank space up here. So remember, you can't forget this. This is important. There's an imaginary 0 here. Because that's how we show, numerically, how we show nothing. When we want to show the value of nothing, we put a 0 there. So when I do a dotted line, that tells you it's an imaginary 0. It's not really there. Now I can compare. Since 8 is greater than, less than, or equal to 0. Well, let's do it in the order in which it comes. Since 2.5 comes first, we'll compare 0 to 8. Is 0 less than 8, equal to 8, or greater than 8? Hopefully, you told me that it was less than 8. And since 0 is less than 8, that means this whole thing is less than that whole thing. Okay? So 2 and 5/10 is less than 2 and 58/100. Okay, well, money sometimes is what you're going to be asked, and money is a decimal. So let's erase this, and let's write two numbers that are money values. What if we had, I want you to compare 96 cents compared to 92 cents. Okay, I want you to compare these. So once again, you rewrite them going up and down, putting them in alignment so that all of your columns match up. So I have a $sign, a 0, a point, a 9, and a 6 for this one. And then I have this value. And I write a $sign, and a 0, and a point, and a 9, and a 2. So now step 2, step 1 was putting them in alignment, all my $signs, all my 1s, which are 0, all my decimal points, all my tenths, or in this case, my 10 cents, and all my pennies, or my hundredths. And we start comparing 0 and 0, 9 and 9. So now I have to go all the way out to the third digit, and I have to compare 6 compared to 2. So is 6 greater than 2, equal to 2, or less than 2? Hopefully you told me it is greater than 2. So if 6 is greater than 2, that means this whole value is greater than this whole value. So you've been dealing with decimals every single time that you deal with money. You've already been doing it. So you're in good shape because you already know how to do this. All right, let's try another example. Let's say you were given 42 and 7/10, and you had to compare it to, 42 and 7/10 compared to 4 and 7/10. Now, your first inclination may be, well, this has 3 digits and this only has 2 digits, so this one has to be bigger. It might be. It might not be. Okay? So you still have to rewrite it, aligning all the numbers in the right places. So we'll write the first one, 42 and 7/10, and we're going to compare it to 4 and 7/10. Now you have to be careful. Put your decimal place in first. Then what comes right before the decimal place? It's a 4. Does anything come before the 4? No. So we leave this blank here. Then you look at your decimal and say, what comes after your decimal? Well, a 7 comes after your decimal. So you have to compare this now. Step 2 says starting in the left. So now remember, here is one of those imaginary zeros. Because when we write 4, we don't write 0, 4 when we're counting, right? We don't do 1, 2, 3. We don't do that when we're counting. But we understand that there's an imaginary 0. Just like when we used to do subtraction problems. If you had 42 minus 7, okay, you would borrow from here and you would get 5. And then 3 minus nothing, there's that imaginary 0. But we're in 4th grade, we don't have to put that imaginary 0 anymore. We would just do 3, right? Okay. So we're going to, just for now, to help us compare, we're going to put our imaginary zeros in, okay? So now we start, step 2 says start at the left at the greatest place value and keep comparing for step 3 until you get something that's different. Well, look at this. We've got a 4 and a 0, so we can stop comparing right now. They're different than each other. How does 4 compare to 0? Is it greater than, less than, or equal to? I'm really hoping that you told me it was greater than. So if you did, then 42 and 7/10 is also greater than 4 and 7/10. Okay, one more example. What if we were given something like this? 39 and 6/10 compared to 3 and 96 100ths. Now they both have 3 and 3. Okay, but look at when we line them up. For step 1, you have to rewrite them going down. We'll put the first one in, 39 and 6/10, and we're going to compare it to this one. Put your decimal point in first. What is right before the decimal point? There's a 3. Is there anything before the 3? No. What comes right after the decimal point? A 9. Does anything come after the 9? Yes, a 6. Okay, now we're going to start at the left and we're going to work our way to the right until we get digits that are different. Now remember, we got an imaginary 0 here. 3 compared to 0. It's different, so we can stop right away. Is 3 greater than, less than, or equal to 0? It is greater than. So therefore, this whole number is greater than that whole number, entire number, okay? So just because they both have 3 digits and they have the same 3 numbers, they're just playing with the decimal point there. So you have to be careful. 396, 396, but look at where the decimal points are. Here and here. This has 2 places before the decimal point. This has 2 places after the decimal point. So you have to be careful. When you're comparing money, there will never be 3 decimal places. There will only be 2. I think that might be it. Oh no, there's one more that I would like to compare, because this is one that I always have a lot of kids get confused about. I want you to tell me if 4 is 4 point, let me give you a different one. What's the one that is 4 point, let me see, are there any of these in there? Okay, there's none in your textbook, but what if you were given 4.0 compared to, let's do 4.10 compared to 4.1. Is this one greater than this one, less than this one, equal to this one? Let's rewrite it. We'll start with our first number, 4 and 10. Say this was $4.10. Say we were talking about money, $4.10, right? 4.10. 4 and 10 hundredths this is. And we want to compare it to 4 and 1/10. 4 and 1/10 compared to 4 and 10 hundredths. Okay, so what you do is the same thing. I compare my left digits, they're still the same. I compare my first place after the decimal, they're the same too. So now I have to do one of these imaginary zeros. Oh goodness, look at that. They're the same also. So 4.10 is equal to 4.1. 4 and 10 hundredths equals 4 and 1/10. They equal each other. Just because this has 2 places after the decimal and this only has 1 doesn't mean the value changes. As you can see here, the 4s are the same, the 1s are the same, and the zeros are the same. We just didn't write this one because it's an imaginary zero here. So don't get confused. 4.10 equals the same thing as 4.1. 4 and 10 1/100ths equals 4 and 1/10. Okay,